So Granger, welcome to Higher Ground. Lots to talk with you about. Your life, I would imagine, is looking a little different these days than it did when you were touring and going around doing music. Talk a little bit about where things are right now. What's been going on?
Yeah, if you were going to ask me 6 years ago if I could predict the next 10 years of my life, I would have thought you were crazy if you described any of the things that I'm doing now. And so I think that's definitely a lesson for me to that we plan responsibly. And it's good to dream, it's good to plan, and it's good to put things in place. But the end result is it's just not up to us. So
Yeah.
I'm traveling a lot, but speaking and not singing. I'm writing a lot, but it's messages and not songs. I'm on the radio a lot, but not my songs. It's my talking. And so, yeah, my life is pretty different right now.
Yeah, no, it's gotta be crazy going from, and obviously you've been called into this, by God, and you felt that calling, but it's gotta be crazy going from doing music for so long and being in this world now. I mean, we're gonna talk about your kid's book, Up Toward the Light, and we'll talk about some other things, but it's just gotta be wild to have such a transition and to sort of step into that's a huge step of faith to walk away from what you were doing into what you're doing now.
Yeah, it is. But as I look at it in hindsight and look at that transition time for me, it wasn't difficult really, um, because I had a feeling of uneasiness throughout it all. I think a calling, as we say, that word itself just sounds like some, like angels are blowing, trumpets or something. But really, it starts with just an uneasiness in the gut. Like, this doesn't feel right. What I'm doing right now no longer feels right. I can't explain it. I don't know if it's indigestion or or something else, but right now, my passion seems to be decreasing in one area and raising in another area, and that's kind of the beginning. That's the first thing that we see, and that's what it was for me. It was an uneasiness that just continued to grow and grow and grow until I was strangled by that uneasiness, and I just said, "Okay, I think I should give this up." I
Yeah.
don't think this is right for me anymore. And once I did that and stepped into that, I felt peace. There it is. There's the rest.
Wow. Did you have a lot of people or some people, in the music industry, people around you who are like, "Are you sure? Like, what are you doing? Are you crazy?" I mean, did you get a lot? Obviously, you have people around you who I'm sure understood it, but did you get a lot of that?
Absolutely. I got a lot more of that than I didn't get that. And it came in different forms. Um, some people said, because I lost my son. And so some people said,
Yeah.
"Oh, Granger, I, if you need to talk, if you need anyone to talk to, I'm here." And I thought, "Oh, you think I'm crazy? You think I've gone crazy? That's what this is. You think I believe in music because I've actually lost my mind." So there was that, and then there was other
Wow.
people on the other side of the spectrum. It was like, "Hey, if you want to tell people about God, use the stage, use your country music stage. That's a great place for it. You got this big audience. Why would you squander that? You got a loud microphone. Don't squander that. Use that for God." And so those were kind of the two sides of the argument.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, if you're that word called, if you feel that prompting, whatever, to move into something else, all of those opinions are, unhelpful in some ways. I mean, it's good to hear what people think, but you
Yeah.
were clearly on a path that you're on now, and it's amazing to watch. And obviously, River, your son, back in 2019, everything you guys went through, so much of that being public, and then you talking about it in your memoir, and just having so many amazing faith messages to come out of that. What was that like to journey through and navigate so publicly?
I don't know, because I only did it that way. I don't know if it was worse or better to do it publicly. There were definitely aspects of it that were horrible. I couldn't escape what I was feeling without, being put on display in that. And but then there were other times where that kind of kicks the can down the road for me. And I might have, if I didn't have that, if I wasn't forward facing in the public, maybe I would have hidden in the closet and just disappeared for a few years and not had that kind of motivation to ever come out. So I don't know. So it was difficult, and yet maybe it was necessary to just continue, and not necessarily to be public forward facing, but maybe it was necessary for anyone listening to just continue on with whatever they're doing, to go back to work, to do the dishes, to mow the grass, to put on your clothes and to brush your teeth, and to continue on. The world is continuing to spin. So we got to continue with that.
Yeah, one thing I've thought a lot about, when people go through difficulties and struggles, I was sort of, I won't say brought up because it was nobody's fault, but I came to believe that it was good to sort of keep things to yourself, conceal them, don't put all of your struggles out. And yet the older I've gotten, the more I've realized, as a Christian, when you put things out there, in the way, in a positive way, in a way that like lets people know what's going on, you get prayer back, right? And having people pray for you and just even think about you and reach out, there's something to that I've kind of come on the other side of that now, where it's like, okay, being open, there's something about that, especially with fellow Christians, that gives us, I think, an upper hand spiritually that maybe I was missing before in my own life when I sort of hid those things or didn't talk about them. Did you feel, and I know it was a complicated process, but have you felt those prayers from people over the last few years?
Oh, Billy, man, that is a great question and a great point and worth unpacking, because like you, I've kind of had that full circle moment where you realize that our gut instinct is not just to, air out all the dirty laundry. Our gut instinct is, let's just hide this stuff. And when someone says, how you doing? Let's just say, fine, I'm doing fine. Don't ask me, And in fact, I ended up telling some people when they would see me and they would say, how you doing? How you doing? How you doing? And I would say, don't ask me that question, man, because that makes me self-conscious that I must be carrying something on my face that looks like I'm not doing well. So if you do me a favor, don't ask me that question. So that's how this whole thing started. It started like that. But then I started realizing, if we aren't more honest with how we feel, if we don't come forward and say, it's actually a tough day. I'm actually not doing great today. I don't think I necessarily need you to be with me or to bring me spaghetti or something, but I don't think I'm doing that well today. What that does is it allows people, like you said, to, well, how can I pray for you? Specifically, how can I pray for you? Because, Lord, be with Granger going through his grief. Or, God, be with Granger today because he's been thinking about this specific thing and he needs to accomplish this specific thing. Lord, make this happen for him. That's a great way to be a friend. And so, full circle. Now, as I talk to people and I see people going through something and I say, how you doing? And they say, good, I'm good. And I think to myself, and sometimes I say it, depending on how close we are as a friend, sometimes I say, I can't be a good friend to you. You can't let me use my spiritual gifts as a Christian unless you tell me what's going on, because I want to intercede for you. I want to pray for you, brother, but I can't pray for you. And if I'm asking for a prayer and you say, I don't know, I'm good. So that's the full circle is, yes, Bill, you're right. We need to be able to be friends. Like, let me be a friend to you. And you could do that by telling me how you're actually doing.
No, I love that. It's so easy to hide it, and I don't know what that is, whether it's some, sense of just shame or not wanting to bother other people or not, I don't know. Maybe it's a mixture of things for people that sort of forces them to hold it in and not. But, I think about how many prayers was I missing out on, by not being open about things. And so I have a totally different perspective. I love what you just said, on that. And I also love the fact that, all the projects you're working on, you have this kids book, Up Toward the Light, which I want to talk about because it deals with grief, loss, struggle. And I'm a huge fan of kids books because they don't just impact the kid, they impact the adult reading them to the kid too. So talk a little bit about your motivation for that project.
Yeah, I feel the same way about kids books. And I think the ultimate motivation for this particular project was just to open a door of conversation between an adult and their kid, or even two adults in the household, most likely two adults or a household that has gone through some kind of grief or loss. So the specific instance in the book, the analogy was a boy that loses his grandpa, and he talks to this tree, and the tree has a lot of wisdom, and you end up finding out that the tree actually was really close to the grandpa as well. The grandpa planted the acorn and nurtured and grew this tree. But the tree's perspective is, if we focus too much on grandpa or the nutrients that have come from the ground, the soil, the other roots that were intertwined with other trees, then we lose the whole purpose of the tree and the whole purpose of growth. And that is moving up toward the light, focusing up. And so that really the book is so that someone in a household, probably a kid, could have a conversation with the parent that maybe is difficult for the parent to bring up. It's almost like connected to the conversation we just had, where it might be hard for the parent to say, how are you doing? Are you doing okay since we lost grandpa? That's a difficult thing to bring that up to a child. Yeah. But you could open a book and work page by page without specifically going there. And then all of a sudden, by the end of the book, you're in it and you're talking about it.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, we need to have these conversation starters, especially in this culture, because it feels like people are struggling so much, and kids are struggling because adults are struggling, right? To process emotions, deal with the things that are happening around us. There's so much going on, around us. When you look at your own ministry that you're doing now, and maybe this is a complicated question, I don't know, but where do you see it going in 5 years, right? I mean, like you said, 6 years ago, you couldn't have thought about where you'd be now. Where do you see yourself 5 years from now?
Yes. So I believe, and I'll say this as carefully as I can because of, how I laid the foundation earlier. If I don't know my future, but we can responsibly plan. So as I go out and I travel and I speak and I talk to people and I hear their questions and I hear their grievances and I hear their struggle with their faith, and I read the Bible and try to surround myself by wise counsel, I have learned to believe that the local church is the tip of the spear that God will use to fulfill the Great Commission. And that's relatively new for me, even though I've called myself a Christian my whole life. I have a new understanding of it now. And as a country music touring musician, being involved in the local church was not part of my repertoire. That is not something I did on a Sunday morning with my family. I did as a kid, but I've come to realize now that serving in that local church is fundamentally so much of what makes us a Christian, and to the conversation of us being able to pray for someone and enable our spiritual gifts, the gifts that God has given us, whether that's the gift of encouragement or the gift of teaching or the gift of serving. All these are acted on in the most precision in the aspect of a local body church. So if I'm looking at my 5-year plan, I say, I want to move more and more into the tip of the spear, which is the local church. And I think that me traveling around and speaking, I think that will most likely, Lord willing, be always kind of part of what I do. But I don't think, and I don't see it being the main thing that I do is I go out and I speak. I want the main thing to be Granger serves his local church. And from there, then he goes out and speaks to other people. So that's kind of what I'm looking at right now for 5 years.
No, I love that. I mean, could you ever, and again, dangerous to ask about the future, could you ever see yourself going back into music in any form again? Or do you think that chapter, at least at this point, from what you're feeling, is closed?
There's no dangerous questions here, man. No dangerous questions. I would imagine me putting out some kind of gospel record, hymn record. I think that would be helpful, probably encouraging for me, for myself. Where it gets dangerous actually is me going out on a tour and supporting it and have a band with me and we're traveling. I don't want to do that. I don't see myself doing that. That's where the sin of pride just comes flying up for me, even at the thought of that. So I would rather stay away from any kind of tour support of it. But hey, putting out an album, maybe some of my favorite hymns, some of my favorite gospel songs, I think that's very doable, and that answers your question in a form of music.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think that's great. And final question for you, and another dangerous one, even though you say there are no dangerous ones. I mean, look, I know a lot of people in entertainment, a lot of actors, singers, people who are Christians. When you look at it, help people understand that the struggle of that fame and faith. And do you think it's easy to find the right balance in that? And maybe that's an individual thing. I don't know, but just curious from your experience.
Hmm. Yeah, that's it's. I don't think there's a balance, man. I don't think there is much of a balance. I don't think you're um, growing your faith, living as a disciple of Christ, and pursuing fame. I don't think there is a healthy balance in there. I think you're either on one side of the scale or not on those two things. And yes, it is individual, absolutely, on how much of that side of the scale you could be on. I mean, you could be a disciple of Christ and have a little bit of a desire for fame, perhaps, as an individual, and you could do that in a healthy balance. I can't. I don't see a path for me in trying to exalt myself and glorifying myself, which is really what you're doing when you're trying to be famous.
Yeah.
It's not to say that you can't be ambitious or have goals or have great self-discipline and want to grow something, but when the something that you're wanting to grow is just your namesake, then the level that people adore you and worship you and glorify you is the level you're growing at. And if they don't do it, you're failing in your business. That's a fundamentally that's a problem, So
Yeah. Well, especially
I
in
can't.
music, because you're standing on a stage. I mean, music more than anything, and people are cheering for you, right? You can make the
Yeah.
argument with actors and others because it does exist, but
Right.
there's even more of a disconnect there than there is for a musician, it would seem.
That's exactly right. And I should have clarified that because there are other ways that you could grow your own personal platform, and you're not seeing the people worshiping you like you do on a music stage.
No, I love that you said that. I mean, I think it's important because you see so many people who just get sucked in and spit out, right? Or they get sucked
Yeah.
into it and they have really good intentions, and it's a struggle for people. But I so appreciate you and your perspective, and I want people to go out and grab the book. It's Up Toward the Light, incredible book for kids and families, and really just as always appreciate you taking the time today.
Man, thank you so much, Billy. I appreciate all your insightful questions.